everyone's favorite topic, the portal. The thing that I think has very good intentions behind it, but it has kind of been implemented in a way that is very much hurting the game and people's perception of the game. And so I want to break down the 3 things that I think Bungie really intends the portal to do. I want to give them a grade on those things, and then I want to break down all of the kind of sub themes within those things. So, for instance, I think if you were to ask Robbie Stevens or Tyson Green why the portal exists, they would probably give you 3 main reasons, as far as I can tell. The portal exists to give you a reason to run old content. Bungie, much smaller studio than it used to be, you know, when Destiny 2 launched, and for the majority of Destiny 2, as far as we can tell, very reduced size, so there's going to be less new content coming out, and so the portal has this really tough job of making it interesting for you to run old content to supplement the lack of new content. The second thing, streamline player time. How do we get players into content as quickly as possible so they're enjoying playing the game and doing less menu gameplay? And then giving you more player agency. What you play, how you play it, the difficulty, etc. As we all know, I think they are not doing any of those particularly well, some better than others, but I want to talk about that. So the first thing is give you a reason to run old content. And I think in some ways they're doing this really well, but there's a lot left on the table here. So I'm going to give them a C grade for this. I do think that in some ways, if you like just look at what we are running, especially across Fireteam and Pinnacle Ops, we are running a wider variety of content from the history of Destiny than we have ever had, ever. At least in a relevant sense. Like, the fact that I can run something from Season of the Wish, and I can run something from Shadowkeep, and I can run something from Warmind, and it's all relevant to my power grind and kind of my progression through the game. That is awesome, and that is something we have never seen before. I will say, I think this feels very bad for a number of reasons. There's a really huge narrative that the portal sunset 90% of the activities in the game. And I think that's not true. I just don't think people really understand the point of the portal. Activities are supposed to come in and out of the portal regularly. So like with Renegades, all the things that we have here will likely be gone, and we'll have a completely new set of seasonal activities and dungeon layers, hopefully, and stuff like that we can run. So while it feels like things like, you know, Catch Crash and other dungeons and stuff, we'll talk about that here in a second even more, like it feels like a lot of this stuff isn't relevant. The goal of the portal, at least as it was explained to us, is that they will be relevant in an upcoming season. So this makes it so instead of a season leaving and then that content being gone forever, it's easier for them to bring things in and out, keep us interested because we're not just running the same strikes over and over again. And I think that's a really noble idea and that could work really well. I just think the cadence might be a little too long, to be completely honest. And that leads to a lot of people forgetting that these other things are supposed to be coming back to the game. The other thing is, I think the breadth of sub-activities is too small. So before, you were forced to run like a very small, limited number of activities every week to level up. You definitely did your Crucible games. You definitely did your strikes. You definitely did your Gambit, the raid. And so it was much smaller in terms of like what was actually relevant. But within that subset, there was a lot more. So yes, you were forced to do your strikes or your Vanguard ops every week, but there was like 25 strikes and battlegrounds and stuff like that in that playlist. Whereas currently there's like what, 5 or 6 strikes, maybe more than that, maybe like 10. But it's definitely like a reduced number of strikes, even though there's a larger number of types of activities that you can run that are similar to that Vanguard ops feel within Fireteam ops, right? So it's this kind of mix and match where there's a huge breadth of activities, but there's not a lot within those subcategories. Like there's not a ton of battlegrounds, there's not a ton of strikes, there's not a ton of nightmare hunts or empire hunts and that sort of stuff. So it's just kind of all over the place. I do think the cadence could be a lot faster though, in terms of how fast we are rotating. Starcross, Whisper, Encore, they've all been here for 4 or 5 months now. I think every 2 months they could easily refresh the activities that are in this, and it would feel way better. We absolutely need a reason to run old dungeons and raids. I'm really not a fan of dungeon layers and how all of that was implemented with no unique loot, and honestly cutting out kind of the best part of all the dungeons. There is not a power relevant dungeon in the game right now, and the dungeons being some of the best content across of Destiny history, both games, that is a huge shame, and that needs to be alleviated or amended as quickly as possible. Same with only Desert Perpetual being relevant and not even really being that good for the power grind. That needs to be fixed. Raids need to drop way more loot, and way more raids need to be relevant. I know that's a lot of work, bringing up that loot and that, you know, those armor sets and that sort of stuff, but that's sort of the task that you undertake when you try to transform the entire core of the game and streamline it in a way that they have here. It just needs to be done. Raids and dungeons are a huge pool of the game, and when they're still, like, you can still play them, but they're not relevant literally at all after just making them relevant again with like red borders, craftable red borders. It's a huge miss. It is just a huge miss. There's other stuff that is just completely ignored. Gambit, of course. I don't really miss it, but I know people do. Patrol zones are completely dead, which is very strange after we just got like a really freaking awesome activity in Overthrow, and the Pale Heart system is awesome. There's just so much content here in the patrol zones that is just completely irrelevant, with bounties being removed, with milestones being removed, with the Pathfinder systems being removed. This content might as well not exist in the game, and that is a huge shame with Destiny, because they have been such a core part of the feeling of Destiny for so long. So I would love to see that changed. The final thing I will say underneath this section, give us a reason to run old content. Remember, at least in my opinion, that should supplement new content. New content should always be the initial focus of a new expansion or season or update, anything like that. And currently things like Reclaim, things like the Civ, things like time lapse missions, etc. do not have Heliostat, do not have enough pull, and they really need to work on getting you to run these activities the most within a given season, and then use the old content to supplement that. Right now, they just feel like any other activity, you run them the same amount, if not less than everything else, and that feels awful. The primary focus should always be new content, in my opinion. That might be a loot problem, that might be a making more interesting content problem, that might be a narrative problem. You know, there's a lot of things that could go into that, but right now, it's just not cutting it. Now we're going to move into the second thing that they were hoping to do, which was streamline player time. How do we get them to launch into the game, know what's going on, and get into boots on the ground as quickly as possible? I'm going to give them a solid D for this. I do not think they have done this very well at all. And I think a lot of this stems from how clunky the portal interface is. I know a lot of people hate this screen. I dislike a lot of it. Like, I really like the idea of having like an upcoming news thing in the game. And I love the tower and the seasonal hub. And a lot of this is cool. The part that I dislike is the disconnect between the directory and the portal. Like, I really think you could stick the portal right there. Like, honestly, have it be part of the directory where it helps you streamline, or just redo this screen where you have your like solo ops, pinnacle ops, fire team ops like up here, and then maybe you can move the planets to different subscreens or something, or squish them down. You can have the news on this screen. I think the disconnect in the UI between the portal and then like the soul of the franchise being the director screen being essentially not used at all, that is a huge miss, and I would love to see in some way these two things combined to really incorporate that soul feeling of Destiny into the portal screen. The other thing I think is matchmaking. They have expanded matchmaking, especially in fire team ops, but I don't know. In my opinion, I think there should be matchmaking on every one of these things for sure. I know that might lead to increased queue times or whatever. But I think it just feels so bad there not being matchmaking on specific stuff, or just make the general playlist a lot more expansive and a lot more rewarding consistently, you know. Stuff like that just needs to happen. They need to find solutions to that, because right now it really does feel more isolating than ever. It doesn't feel very efficient. And having to go to Discord or Fireteam Finder, like, that's the exact opposite of streamlining player time. You are making people spend more time finding out how to play specific activities, and then you know, they got to click all these sub menus and stuff like that, on top of other player agency stuff that we'll talk about here in a second. So I think they should really work on this. Wait, what the heck? What is that? Has anyone ever seen this? Oh, that's the sponsor for this video, Green Man Gaming, with their new project, Green Man Gaming Bundles, where they are doing a lot of awesome stuff, putting different games and expansions and bundles together that support charity. And in this example, they are doing a Destiny 2 expansion bundle for 2025, where you can get pretty much every expansion for Destiny 2 for incredibly cheap. In fact, you can get this expansion bundle for $35, and it includes Renegades, Edge of Fate, 30th Anniversary, Witch Queen, the Forsaken Pack, Lightfall, the Final Shape, Shadowkeep, and Beyond Light. Pretty much everything that's still in the game for $35, which is $5 cheaper than just buying Renegades alone, and the proceeds benefit the Bungie Foundation. This is an incredible deal. Make sure you act on this. I think it's only available for, 17 more days. You have a very limited time to do this. Get ahead of Renegades, play Edge of Fate if you haven't, or check out these smaller bundles and get some of the DLC that you might not have from the history of Destiny. Thank you so much to Green Man Gaming for sponsoring this video, and the link will be in the pinned comment below. And then we can move on to the third thing that I think the portal is really supposed to do, which is to give you, the player, more direct agency. They give you a wide variety of activities to play, what difficulties, the modifiers, what loot you want to grind for, stuff like that. But I do think they are missing the mark. This is probably the thing that they do the best, so like a B- to C, somewhere in there. But I do think they actually swung too far, and I think that really stems, for me, from the modifiers. Man, the modifiers, I like some of the changes that they did, simplifying the modifiers here, but having to set this up every time you switch an activity is so annoying, or every time a new activity comes out, or any time that you switch to a new difficulty. It's just a lot, and it really takes the wind out of my sails, personally. And everyone sort of has like a default combination they go for, but what I would love to see from Bungie is like a default option where it's like, hey, we think this is like a decent offering, it'll get you that A that you need, but feel free to switch it up. But it's just like a small way where they can kind of expedite your time, make it so if you don't want to worry about it, you can just load it right into the activity. The other thing is the scoring. The whole like, oh, do I need a B? Do I need a B+? Do I need an A? Do I need an A+? It's just so much. The fact that it's like, oh, every activity goes up to 10,000 score, but then you get these these multipliers that bring you up to like 1.7 quadrillion. Like, it's just so much. It's just so much. These things have been changed over the last few months. It's a lot to keep up with. There's so many submenus. I didn't even know this reward submenu existed until last week. And I'm like 530 light or something. Like, there's just it's just too granular. It's too much. There's too many things to change. And if I am a 10,000 hour Destiny player and this is too much for me, I cannot even imagine a player who has taken a long break from the franchise coming back, or a new player coming back. I just am not a fan of really how granular this system is, at least at default. Once again, if you can just standardize it, just give me like, okay, you want to do ultimate, here's the default modifiers, this will get you the best rewards. Feel free to add some player boons and stuff and play with it, but at default, this is good enough. I think just that small change would go a very, very long way. The other thing in the player agency, you know, kind of matchmaking kind of plays into that sort of stuff, giving us a wider variety of old activities plays into that. But the other thing is going to be like difficulty in the relation to light level. We've talked about this a little bit in my last video, but I just think right now they've kind of walked things back so much where there's no point in getting above light level 470 anymore. You can do most of the hardest content in the game very easily there, and there's no additional loot incentive. A lot of the community's like super split on this. Like, we're gonna go into renegades, we're gonna be max level because they're not resetting light. We're just gonna be getting tier 5s, and I think that will feel very good for a little bit of time, but then we're not gonna have any reason to like keep pushing or grinding. Like, you're taking away the core gameplay loop. So I think like something on this front needs to change. I don't have any solutions to offer because some people like light leveling and some people don't, and some people like being forced to do higher level content and some people don't, and some people like having that additional loot incentive to do things like conquests and really push yourself to do that, but some people don't. And so I think this is a very complex problem, the kind of relationship between the, you know, grandmaster, master, ultimate difficulty, your higher light levels, your conquests, the lack of like grandmaster nightfalls. Like, I think you can tie that somewhere in here. Tiered loot, tier 5 armor, tier 5 weapons, and then all of this is exacerbated by a lack of vault space. You know, we're supposed to be keeping all of this crazy upgraded loot, but like, who has room for it across 3 characters? And then I would argue a lack of loadouts. I think we could use easily 4 times as many loadouts in this game, or at least like a loadout holder so I could swap things in and out to my hotbar here, you know, sort of like Dim has. I just think like this side of the player agency where there's so much to do, but to a point there's no reason to do it, and it's like, do they want you to push yourself, do they not? What, you know, what's going on here? That needs to be fixed, but I have like literally no answer to that because it is like the core of the system, and they've implemented it and they've walked it back, and then, you know, it's all over the place. So something needs to change with the relationship of difficulty of content, light leveling, tiered loot, places to put all of this loot, and like skill expression and like game knowledge expression as well. Like, I think there's a huge disconnect here compared to times in the game like Age of Triumph and Arrivals and that sort of stuff, and I would love to see them address that. So that's all of the main issues I currently have with the portal. I think it is a very important concept for the future of Destiny, but I think they are really missing the mark still, and I would love to see some big strides being taken with the launch of Renegades. If you guys think I missed anything, let me know down in the comment section below. Make sure you subscribe if you're interested in more Destiny content. Check out the sponsor in the pinned link down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. I love your faces, and I'll see you very soon. See ya.